heartless millionaire left his pregnant wife in a fire for his mistress, she returned for revenge. He had the world in his grasp, handsome, rich, and esteemed by New York's elite. Yet, beneath the polished exterior, a selfish heart beat. In a devastating turn of events, his pregnant wife found herself trapped in a raging fire that ripped through their estate. Standing amidst the chaos, he made a choice that would define him forever. He pulled his seductive mistress to safety and left his terrified wife behind. Everyone believed she perished in the flames until she returned, haunted by betrayal and determined to make him pay. From glitzy penthouses to hidden plots of retribution, this is their explosive story. Lance Westbrook was not born into wealth. His childhood home in upstate New York had peeling paint and cold floors in winter. His father worked at a local garage, grease under his nails, while his mother juggled shifts at a diner. From an early age, Lance vowed he would never be poor again. He showed a precocious talent for numbers, devouring every library book on business he could find. By 17, he'd launched a small but profitable online retail site, flipping discounted electronics. Admitted to Wharton on a scholarship, he immersed himself in networking. Charisma radiated off him. Professors praised his sharp intellect, and fellow students saw him as a rising star. Upon graduation, he joined Morgan Stanley in Manhattan, quickly making his mark. His gift for reading market trends turned heads at the firm. By his late 20s, he'd moved on from the corporate world to start his own private equity enterprise. Profits soared to dizzying heights. During those early years in the city, Lance met Naomi, an architectural student at Columbia. She stood out from the socialites he usually encountered. Warm and grounded, Naomi listened intently to his big plans, but never seemed mesmerized by his shiny successes. Lance was intrigued by her steady moral compass and honest laughter. She, in turn, was captivated by his ambition, not because of the money, but because of the spark in his eyes when he described how he wanted to reshape entire industries. They dated for 2 whirlwind years, capturing youthful dreams in late-night walks through Riverside Park. Lance valued Naomi's vision of building livable, sustainable structures for everyday people. She liked that he believed in bold transformations. Despite occasional red flags like Lance's single-minded pursuit of profit, they built a life together, culminating in a lavish wedding on a rooftop overlooking Central Park. City tabloids celebrated them as a power couple, but close friends knew Naomi was the moral anchor in an increasingly cutthroat environment. Months into their marriage, Lance's unstoppable ambition only grew. He diversified his holdings, acquiring real estate in Manhattan, investing in tech startups, and forging partnerships with foreign investors. Their wealth ballooned. They moved into a sprawling penthouse with floor-to-ceiling windows that framed the city skyline. Life seemed perfect on the surface, but behind the facade, subtle cracks formed. Late nights at the office, hush-hush meetings, and a creeping arrogance in Lance's demeanor began to overshadow the love story that had brought them together. Naomi often felt she was speaking to a stranger, one who was so obsessed with material achievements that he barely recognized right from wrong. Neither realized how these cracks would soon open into a canyon of betrayal that no amount of money could fill. Lance's private equity firm, Westbrook Capital, soared in reputation. He graced the pages of the New York Times financial section, heralded as the new face of aggressive buyouts and corporate restructuring. CEOs courted his favor, desperate for capital injections that could rescue or overhaul their companies. Lance reveled in the influence he wielded with a single signature on a dotted line. Deals worth hundreds of millions hinged on his whim. More money, more power, more prestige. He was unstoppable. But as his professional profile rose, so did an insidious sense of entitlement. He demanded immediate results from employees, launched businesses in industries he knew little about, and juggled them with reckless ambition. Meetings turned into screaming matches if targets weren't met. Mistakes, no matter how small, were met with icy retribution. When Naomi gently advised caution, worried about the moral implications of his deals, Lance brushed her off. He dismissed her concerns as naive, telling her that real money wasn't made by playing it safe or being sentimental. Disheartened, Naomi attempted to focus on her architectural projects. She had begun freelancing with a sustainability firm, designing low-income housing developments intended to uplift poorer neighborhoods. Her vision was philanthropic, merging practicality with dignity. Yet whenever she shared a triumph, Lance's attention flickered, as if philanthropic endeavors were a silly hobby in comparison to his billionaire pursuits. He'd congratulate her with hollow words, then pivot back to the stock markets, impatient with anything that wasn't about accelerating returns on investment. The rift between them deepened further when Naomi started noticing questionable tactics at Westbrook Capital. Rumors whispered of insider deals, shell companies, and regulatory lines that Lance and his top associates danced around. She confronted him one evening, voice trembling. He laughed it off, calling it rumor mongering from jealous rivals. But a shadowy look crossed his face, hinting at how far he was willing to go to protect his empire. Then came the first real betrayal. Naomi discovered texts on Lance's phone from a woman named Serafina Rourke. The messages hinted at more than just business, subtle flirtations after work plans. Confronting him, Naomi was met with a wave of denial, swiftly followed by anger for prying. Lance claimed Serafina was a prominent investor's daughter, that the banter was harmless. Naomi wanted to believe him, to trust the man she once adored, yet the emotional distance was undeniable. In bed, Lance either fell asleep mid-conversation or scrolled through his phone until the early hours. Business trips got extended. Intimacy vanished, replaced by a cold, restless tension. Though Naomi prayed it was just a rough patch, a sense of dread pooled in her stomach. If Lance could act so blaze about moral boundaries in business, what lines would he cross in his personal life? She tried ignoring her suspicions, burying herself in architectural plans and hoping love would bridge the gap. She had no way to foresee that a shocking twist one, involving life, death, and unimaginable betrayal lurked on the horizon, ready to strike. As the distance between Lance and Naomi widened, an unexpected development threw their lives into chaos. Naomi discovered she was pregnant. The symptoms started subtly fatigue and a hint of morning nausea. At first, she chalked it up to stress, but a home test confirmed the truth. She was going to have a baby. Despite her reservations about Lance's shifting morals, Naomi felt a surge of hope. Perhaps this child would rekindle the love they once shared and draw them back together. Late one evening, she planned a special dinner in the penthouse, cooking his favorite meal. She lit candles, set the table with fine china, and nervously awaited Lance's arrival. He walked in an hour late, jacket slung over one arm, tie askew. Without pausing to greet her, he mumbled about a failed negotiation, cursing incompetent brokers. Naomi gently led him to the table, trying to calm his simmering rage. Her voice trembled with nervous excitement as she announced, "Lance, we're having a baby." For a moment, he seemed too stunned to speak. Then his expression hardened. Instead of joy, Naomi saw alarm, even frustration. He asked how far along she was, then launched into a flurry of questions about how this would affect their routines. His words cut like ice. "Do you really think this is the best time? With the deals I have coming up, do you think I can handle a newborn right now?" Naomi's heart sank. She had prepared for many possible reactions, tears of joy, perhaps even relief, but not this cold assessment of how a child might inconvenience him. She argued that love didn't have a schedule, that parenthood was a blessing, but Lance barely met her eyes. In the days that followed, he feigned a mechanical sort of support, scheduling doctor's appointments, transferring money into Naomi's account to cover costs. But the intangible warmth of an expectant father was missing. He started sleeping in his home office, claiming stress kept him awake. Once, Naomi overheard him whispering to Serafina Rourke on the phone about business expansions. Though the conversation had a flirtatious undertone, she felt sick to her stomach, wishing the pregnancy would unite them, yet seeing him slip further away. Still, she pressed on. She read baby books, bought prenatal vitamins, tried to cultivate positivity for the little life growing inside her. Each time she pictured a tiny heartbeat in her womb, she clung to hope. But as Lance's resentment and restlessness grew, a storm of betrayal brewed in the background, culminating in the single act that would shatter all illusions of trust, the fateful night of the fire. Rumors about Lance's affair with Serafina Rourke spread quietly among the wealthy circles he frequented. She was the daughter of Charles Rourke, a veteran investor with ties to old money in Europe. Serafina was known for her striking looks and ruthless charm. She moved through banquets and fundraisers like a swan, leaving male admirers starstruck in her wake. Lance, riding the high of his financial success, found himself gravitating toward her powerful family's network. At first, their relationship masqueraded as business. Serafina pitched a collaborative fund, hoping to merge Westbrook Capital with her father's international assets. Lance welcomed the idea, aware that forging alliances with the Rourkes would catapult his status. Lavish dinners morphed into late-night strategy sessions. Naomi, pregnant and often alone, suspected something deeper was at play but lacked proof. Then, Lance made a grave mistake. One evening, absent-mindedly, he left his phone on the coffee table. A message from Serafina popped onto the screen. "Can't wait to see you again tonight. Miss your touch." Naomi, walking by, glimpsed the text. Her stomach churned. Confronting Lance unleashed a torrent of denial. He claimed it was harmless flirting, a cultural difference, anything to placate her. But Naomi saw the guilt etched in his eyes. Over time, Lance stopped pretending. When Naomi asked if he was actually in love with Serafina, Lance simply said he respected her and enjoyed her intelligence. The semantics only confirmed Naomi's worst fears. Naomi tried to reason with him, reminding him of her pregnancy, pleading for the sake of their unborn child, but Lance remained resolute that business came first and emotional entanglements were unavoidable. In his twisted logic, the potential gains from bonding with the Rourkes justified crossing any moral lines. Serafina, too, was hardly innocent. She relished the power she held over Lance. Naomi became a mere obstacle. She dropped sarcastic remarks at high society events, flaunting her closeness to Lance whenever possible. At times, she'd parade her father's endorsement of Lance's deals as if they were stepping stones to an unspoken engagement. The tabloids, always sniffing for scandal, started hinting at a major shift in Lance Westbrook's personal life. Naomi, feeling battered by heartbreak, retreated into her own sorrow. She busied herself with her architectural drawings, enduring sleepless nights filled with dread about the future. How could a man she once admired, a man she believed was good at heart, become so callous? Each day she awoke, hoping for a miracle, that Lance would come to his senses. But the path he was on led toward one unimaginable act of betrayal. The night the flames rose high, and a single decision spelled out who truly mattered to him and who did not. It happened during a business retreat at the Westbrook countryside estate, an opulent manor perched on a lush estate near the Hudson River. Lance often hosted potential investors there, bringing them away from the city's distractions to finalize lucrative deals. This time, Serafina and her father attended, along with a handful of foreign financiers. Naomi, heavily pregnant by now, was merely a decorative presence at the event. She felt uncomfortable, overshadowed by Serafina's confidence and her father's smooth negotiations with Lance. The evening started with a grand dinner in the manor's dining hall. Crystal chandeliers bathed the table in warm light. Bottles of vintage champagne circulated. Lance was in his element, charming the financiers with tales of expansions, profits, and synergy. Naomi tried to remain composed, forcing smiles and polite conversation despite her inner turmoil. Serafina laughed a little too freely at Lance's jokes, leaning close to him whenever she spoke. After dinner, the group migrated to the manor's large drawing room, complete with a roaring fireplace. Naomi, feeling tired, excused herself to rest upstairs. She felt nauseous, her back ached, and the tension was becoming suffocating. Lance barely noticed her exit, absorbed in a debate about global markets. Serafina's laughter trailed behind Naomi like a mocking echo. Around midnight, as the investors retired to their guest suites, Lance and Serafina lingered near the fireplace. Embers glowed in the hearth, reflecting in her eyes as she whispered sweet promises. Lance, emboldened by wine and self-importance, responded with hushed words of desire. Though the manor was old, with creaking wooden beams, the thought of potential hazards barely registered to anyone. Replacing old wiring or upgrading safety measures was low on Lance's priority list. No one noticed the spark in the fireplace jump onto the threadbare rug, a tiny ember lost in the glow of the night. Within minutes, the old cloth began to smolder. Curtains caught next, dancing with orange tongues of flame. By the time the smoke reached the upper floors, a small inferno had begun to spread, fueled by the manor's aged wooden structure. Naomi woke to the smell of burning. Panic seized her as she realized the corridors were filling with smoke. Disoriented, she rushed to find Lance, calling his name. Flames licked the walls, thick smoke stinging her eyes. She coughed, heart pounding. Her unborn child kicked frantically within her, as if sensing danger. In the chaos, she heard distant shouts. 1,000 thoughts raced through her mind. How to escape, whether everyone was safe, and where, oh where, was Lance? As the fire grew, the manor's alarms belatedly began to shriek. Confused guests scrambled from their rooms, coughing and stumbling through thick smoke. Downstairs, Lance and Serafina were among the first to notice the flames racing across the rug toward the furniture. A primal fear overtook them. They rushed toward the main exit, ignoring the panicked cries of the staff and investors still fumbling about. Naomi, on the second floor, tried to make her way downstairs. She shielded her nose and mouth with a sleeve, every breath a choking ordeal. Smoke enveloped the corridors, rendering her nearly blind. Her pregnant belly made moving swiftly difficult. She prayed that Lance would come for her, that despite their marital rift, he wouldn't leave her or the child they had created. Finally, she reached the grand staircase, only to see a roaring wall of fire blocking her path. The heat was unbearable, forcing her back. She heard faint voices from below, Lance's voice among them. Summoning what little strength she had, Naomi shouted his name, coughing violently. But the flames crackled louder, drowning her out. Outside, Lance and Serafina burst through the main door with a small cluster of terrified guests. Fresh air filled their lungs, a stark contrast to the suffocating haze inside. Staff scrambled to call 911, and someone shouted for everyone to stand back as the flames devoured the manor's old timbers. Lance, eyes wild, scanned the gathering crowd, foreign financiers, staff members. Serafina clinging to him in panic. He realized Naomi was missing, and the weight of that realization flickered across his face. For a heartbeat, he seemed conflicted. But then Serafina grabbed his arm, tears streaking her cheeks, begging him not to go back inside. She cried that it was too dangerous, that the house was moments from collapse. A rush of selfish fear overcame him, fear of dying, fear of losing everything. He let out a strangled breath, turned away from the burning doorway, and allowed Serafina to drag him further from the inferno. Naomi's name died on his lips. Inside, Naomi clung to the banister, feeling the heat sear her skin. She thought of her unborn child. Desperate, she tried to find another exit. By a stroke of fortune, she remembered the estate's back staircase leading to the kitchen. Crouching low, she navigated the smoke-filled corridor. The journey was excruciating, flames licking at her heels, beams collapsing around her. But maternal instinct drove her on. She stumbled through the kitchen door, bursting into the cool night air just as a section of the roof caved in. When the fire trucks finally arrived, they found Naomi unconscious near the estate's back lawn, her body scorched, clothes singed, yet miraculously alive. Lance, preoccupied with Serafina's safety and the potential liability claims, never realized that at that exact moment, the paramedics were rushing Naomi and their unborn child to Mount Sinai Hospital, clinging to the narrowest thread of life. By the time dawn broke, the once majestic countryside manor had been reduced to smoking ruins. Lance lingered at the edge of the property, arms wrapped around Serafina as firefighters doused the last embers. He offered statements to the local news, spinning it as a tragic accident, old wiring, a forgotten spark. Worried about the blow to his image, he made sure to hint at large donations to the local fire department for new equipment. Even now, in the aftermath of horror, he thought first of damage control. He believed Naomi was lost in the blaze. A strange numbness enveloped him, part shock, part relief. But he also felt a gnawing guilt that he brushed aside. He convinced himself that no one could have survived that inferno. Reporting Naomi's death would be easier than explaining how he'd failed to save her. He knew the press would eventually descend on this story, and he planned to spin it in a way that painted him as a grieving husband. Meanwhile, Naomi lay in critical condition at Mount Sinai Hospital's burn unit. The paramedics had found her barely breathing. She had second- and third-degree burns along her arms and torso. Smoke inhalation scarred her lungs. Doctors scrambled to stabilize her vital signs, administering oxygen and the fourth fluids. The risk of infection was high. Most pressing of all was the welfare of her unborn baby. The medical team held an emergency consultation. The trauma was severe, and the baby's life hung in the balance. Naomi drifted in and out of consciousness, oblivious to the chaos around her. In moments of lucidity, she whispered Lance's name, then coughed violently as the ventilator hissed. Nightmares plagued her, visions of fire, of Lance turning his back on her, of Serafina's triumphant smirk. She felt her unborn child's faint movements like a plea to keep fighting. A day later, the doctors faced a critical juncture. They performed an emergency procedure to save the baby, a tiny girl who arrived prematurely but clung stubbornly to life. Naomi's condition remained touch and go, an infection threatening to wreak havoc. Yet her body, fueled by maternal love, fought against the odds. Word of Naomi's miraculous survival did not reach Lance. She was listed under a Jane Doe in the hospital records, standard procedure for unidentified trauma victims with no ID on them. The hospital staff had no way of contacting next of kin. Meanwhile, Lance and Serafina left the charred ruins behind, returning to Manhattan. The tragedy that should have broken Lance's conscience instead pushed him further into a twisted rationalization. If Naomi was gone, he could continue with Serafina, free of any guilt or obligations. But life had other plans. Naomi's survival would soon be the catalyst for a reckoning more terrifying than any blaze. 2 weeks after the fire, Naomi regained consciousness. A dull ache coursed through her body, punctuated by stinging pain whenever she moved. Bandages swathed much of her skin, hiding the raw, burned flesh beneath. Machines beeped steadily, tracking her vital signs. Slowly, she pieced together flashes of memory, the smoke, the flames, Lance's absence in her darkest hour. She panicked, recalling her pregnancy. Almost in response, a soft cry echoed from a nearby bassinet, her newborn daughter. Nurses stepped in, calming Naomi's frantic questions. Against the odds, her baby had survived. Weak and premature, yes, but very much alive. Naomi wept, arms trembling as she cradled the tiny infant. The child's skin was delicate, eyes fluttering with life Naomi had feared was lost. When hospital administrators tried to confirm Naomi's identity, she struggled to speak. Her throat felt raw from inhalation injuries. She managed to whisper her name, Naomi Westbrook, but the surname triggered no response from the staff. Officially, she was still recorded as Jane Doe. She had no phone or ID, everything had been destroyed. The local police had not linked her to the manor fire, as Lance had provided them with incomplete information. He mentioned Naomi's supposed tragic death, but no body had been recovered. Naomi realized with horror that Lance believed she was dead and that he might be relieved about it. Summoning what little energy she had, she begged the hospital staff for a phone. Her immediate thought was to call her parents, who lived several states away. But they had never approved of her marriage to Lance, and she'd lost touch over the years. She dialed old numbers, only to reach disconnected lines or strangers. Meanwhile, she discovered from a newspaper clipping a nurse provided that Lance was continuing his business as usual, with Serafina by his side at corporate galas. The obituary for Naomi Westbrook was suspiciously absent. Perhaps Lance found it more convenient to let the rumor of her death float quietly, overshadowed by the tragic accident. Naomi seethed with a fury stronger than any physical pain. She saw her disfigured reflection in a small handheld mirror, a face she barely recognized. Yet the baby's presence reminded her she had a reason to fight. If Lance had left her for dead, she would make sure he faced the consequences. The seeds of revenge took root in her wounded heart, nourished by betrayal and heartbreak. She refused to let the hospital discharge her under her real name, fearful that Lance might discover her survival prematurely and snatch away her child. She concocted a plan to rebuild her strength, find trusted allies, and strike at Lance when he least expected. The flames that nearly ended her life now fueled a passion for justice that burned brighter than any inferno. Naomi spent 3 long months in Mount Sinai Hospital's burn unit. She battled infection after infection, endured multiple surgeries, and underwent agonizing physical therapy to regain mobility in her arms. Each day, she demanded to see her child. Stroking the baby's tiny fingers, she drew courage from that fragile life. The staff, moved by her resilience, gave her the best care possible. Funds were an issue, but an anonymous donor, a retired nurse who'd been touched by Naomi's plight, stepped in to cover critical expenses. Naomi resolved to repay that kindness one day. During these painful weeks, Naomi discovered a quiet ally in a young nurse named Dara Lynn. Empathetic and discreet, Dara helped Naomi piece together news from the outside world. She printed articles about Lance and Serafina attending philanthropic events, read business magazines detailing Westbrook Capital's expansions. Each snippet of information slashed at Naomi's heart. Lance acted every bit the wealthy bachelor, forging deeper ties with the Rourkes. Apparently unaffected by the tragedy, bitter determination coalesced in Naomi's mind. Once she was strong enough, she'd leave the hospital quietly, She and her daughter, whom she'd named Luna, would vanish, giving Naomi time to strategize. She refused to let Lance suspect her survival until she had the power to confront him on her own terms. If she revealed herself too soon, he might use his considerable influence to undermine her credibility or take Luna away. Step by step, Naomi learned how to walk again without excruciating pain. Physical therapy sessions, combined with her innate grit, gradually restored her strength. She also consulted a trauma counselor who urged her to confront the emotional toll. At times, Naomi felt consumed by rage, haunted by the image of Lance fleeing the fire with Serafina, leaving her to die. But Luna's needs kept her anchored. She would not let hatred erode her ability to be a loving mother. When the day of discharge arrived, Naomi left under a pseudonym, with official records listing her as an out-of-state burn victim. Dara helped arrange a small, modest apartment in a quieter part of the city, courtesy of a local charity that placed trauma survivors in transitional housing. Naomi used the last of her savings to secure the spot, forging an agreement to pay rent once she could work again. Alone in that humble apartment, with baby Luna gurgling softly, Naomi felt a surge of determination. Lance Westbrook might be the darling of Wall Street, but he was also a soulless coward who left his pregnant wife to burn. She vowed she'd gather evidence of his crimes, financial, moral, and beyond. She would rip away his false halo in the public eye. Then, when he finally saw her face again, scarred yet unbroken, she'd unleash a reckoning more brutal than any flames that once consumed her. Life in her modest, new apartment was a far cry from the penthouse Naomi once called home. Medical bills still loomed, and caring for Luna demanded constant energy. But every time she felt overwhelmed, she reminded herself of her mission: to expose Lance Westbrook for who he truly was and ensure he could never hurt anyone again. Her first step was building a support network. She reached out to Dara Lynn for medical advice and emotional backup. Through Dara, she also connected with a local women's shelter that specialized in helping survivors of domestic and emotional abuse. Although Lance had never physically harmed Naomi before the fire, the betrayal amounted to a profound violation. The shelter offered legal resources and introduced Naomi to a pro bono investigator named Colin Chase, a retired detective with a passion for justice. Colin listened carefully to Naomi's story, eyes darkening at the mention of Lance's callousness. He agreed to help her dig into Westbrook Capital's dealings, suspecting there might be skeletons in Lance's corporate closet. Together, they formed a clandestine plan: gather evidence of any illegal or unethical practices, quietly verify Naomi's account of the fire, and compile enough proof to blow Lance's carefully constructed image to smithereens. Naomi learned from Colin that Westbrook Capital was rumored to be engaged in shady deals overseas, allegations of bribery, shady shell companies, and even sabotage of competitor projects. Colin had contacts in the finance world who owed him favors. He believed if they could link Lance's personal actions to these fraudulent schemes, the authorities would pounce. Naomi, for her part, had unique knowledge of Lance's routine, confidants, and thought processes. She recalled half-overheard phone calls, suspicious wire transfers, and personal diaries. Lance sometimes scribbled in after a big victory. Still, evidence alone wasn't enough. Naomi wanted to confront Lance face to face, to see the look in his eyes when he realized she was alive. But the wise counsel from Colin and Dara urged patience. It was dangerous to tip Lance off. He was wealthy, powerful, and unscrupulous, capable of paying off law enforcement or burying lawsuits under an army of lawyers. Another risk: he might come after Naomi or, worse, try to claim Luna if he knew the baby existed. So Naomi began her days caring for her infant daughter, while nights were spent poring over old documents, searching for any lead that might implicate Lance. Each phone call with Colin yielded fresh possibilities. Meanwhile, rumors swirled in society columns that Lance and Serafina were planning a grand engagement. The tabloids dubbed them the golden couple, the wealthy financier and his brilliant partner from an old money family. Naomi could practically taste her anger every time she saw a headline about them. The world might see a fairy tale, but she knew it was a castle built on ashes, and she was about to bring it crashing down. Weeks stretched into months. Naomi's face had mostly healed, though scars remained on her arms and shoulders. Her hair, once long and lustrous, was cropped short to manage the areas singed by the flames. Still, her gaze gleamed with a steely resolve. She took cautious steps outside her apartment, wearing hats and scarves to avoid being recognized. She was determined to keep her existence a secret until the moment was ripe. In this period of strategic planning, a surprise visitor arrived, Danielle Fisher, a disgruntled former executive assistant at Westbrook Capital. Colin had discovered her name in a list of ex-employees who left under mysterious circumstances. When Danielle heard about Naomi's quest for justice, she reached out covertly, claiming she had crucial information. They met at a quiet cafe in a less fashionable part of the city, well away from Lance's typical haunts. Danielle appeared nervous, glancing over her shoulder as she spoke. She revealed that, over her 3-year tenure, she'd witnessed hush-hush transactions and overheard phone calls that indicated money laundering, insider trading, and bribes to foreign officials. She had copies of emails, bank statements, digital footprints that could tie Lance directly to criminal activity. The catch? She needed protection. Lance's lawyers had threatened her when she attempted to negotiate a severance package, accusing her of breach of contract if she leaked any corporate secrets. Naomi assured Danielle she wasn't alone in this fight. Colin arrived soon after, exchanging details and verifying Danielle's claims. Danielle's trove of evidence was a game-changer. If properly presented to law enforcement and the media, it could trigger a full-scale investigation, possibly toppling Westbrook Capital. Naomi's heart pounded at the possibility, forcing Lance to face public disgrace and legal consequences. It was more than she dared hope for. But Danielle also brought news that chilled Naomi's blood. Westbrook Capital had been quietly searching for Naomi's remains. The official story was that no body was found after the fire, and Lance spun it as an unspeakable tragedy, perhaps. Wild animals had dragged her away, or the flames had been too intense to leave remains. The firm hired private detectives to close the case, ensuring no questions remained that might tarnish Lance's narrative. If these investigators discovered Naomi was alive, they might take drastic steps to silence her. Naomi clenched her jaw, grateful for Danielle's warning. A new sense of urgency pulsed through her. Time was running out. She needed to finalize her plan to strike at Lance before he discovered her survival. It was a high-stakes game of cat and mouse, with powerful players on both sides. But with Luna's presence in her life, Naomi refused to let fear overrule her quest. She'd face the danger head-on. After all, she'd already walked through fire. Facing a corrupt millionaire who once loved her was only the next challenge in a life reshaped by betrayal. The walls around Lance Westbrook began to tighten, though he remained blissfully unaware. Behind the scenes, Naomi, Colin, and Danielle meticulously organized the trove of evidence, digital proof of Lance's illegal dealings, witness statements from ex-employees, and details about the hush money paid to regulatory officials. They also mapped out a timeline of Lance's actions leading up to the catastrophic fire. Each puzzle piece fit together, forming a damning picture of a man who put profit and personal gain above human life. Meanwhile, rumors about Lance and Serafina's engagement grew stronger. Invitations for an extravagant celebration circulated among Manhattan's elite. Lance had rented the grand ballroom of the Plaza Hotel for the announcement, aiming to impress the Rourke family's European connections. The event was set to be a spectacle, a list celebrities, influential politicians, and foreign dignitaries on the guest list. In an ironic twist, it was scheduled for the exact date that would have marked Lance and Naomi's third wedding anniversary. Naomi felt a deep pang when she learned of the event. The memory of her own wedding day stung like a fresh wound. She wondered how Lance could so casually discard everything they'd shared. But fury quickly overshadowed her hurt. She resolved to make the Plaza Gala the scene of Lance's undoing. If he wanted to flaunt his new life, she would ensure his old sins were laid bare before all the cameras and the city's most influential figures. To execute this, Naomi needed one last piece, a personal confrontation. She wanted to see if Lance harbored any regret or remorse. She arranged a clandestine meeting under an alias posing as a potential investor from a Middle Eastern royal family. With Danielle's help, she secured a short appointment at Westbrook Capital's skyscraper. The plan was to gauge his readiness, or to confirm if he truly cared nothing for the life he took from her. Colin argued that revealing herself prematurely was dangerous, but Naomi insisted on witnessing Lance's arrogance firsthand. She'd take precautions, a disguised appearance, a voice modulator if necessary. Each passing hour, Naomi's adrenaline spiked. She carefully rehearsed how to handle the confrontation, reminding herself that her prime directive was to collect final proof. But an undercurrent of raw emotion coursed through her. She wanted to stand before Lance as the living testament he'd tried to snuff out. She wanted to watch his face when the realization struck that she had survived, that their unborn child had survived, and that the revenge she'd nurtured was about to scorch his life. Outside, Manhattan's busy streets glistened, unaware of the cataclysm that would soon unfold within its gilded halls. The countdown to the Plaza event marched on. Naomi inhaled, gathering her courage. Lance Westbrook would learn that some fires can't be extinguished, and the flames of betrayal always burn back. The day Naomi marched into Westbrook Capital felt surreal, dressed in a sleek, conservative suit and wearing tinted glasses to mask her eyes. She arrived at the gleaming skyscraper that soared above Midtown. Danielle had arranged an appointment under the pseudonym Amira Khalid, an interested Middle Eastern investor. Colin stood a few blocks away with a small team, ready to intervene if anything went awry. Naomi's heart hammered in her chest as she passed security, forging a calm exterior that belied her turbulent emotions. On the executive floor, a polished receptionist led Naomi to Lance's corner office, a panoramic view of the city offered behind towering glass windows. The air smelled of expensive cologne and freshly printed contracts. Naomi braced herself, the burned scars on her arms tingling beneath her blouse. Then she saw him. Lance stood by his desk, phone in hand, discussing some urgent deal. Despite the passage of time, he looked almost unchanged, confident posture, slicked back hair, a tailored suit that screamed affluence. His voice carried that same arrogance she remembered too well. When he turned around and glanced at Naomi, he offered a dismissive smile, barely looking up from his phone. "Miss Khalid?" "Pleasure," he said briskly, motioning for her to sit. "Let's be quick. I have a flight to catch for a major investor meeting in London tomorrow." Naomi's pulse pounded. She slid into the chair across from him, scanning his face for any glimmer of guilt or recognition. He remained oblivious. As he began rattling off Westbrook Capital's portfolio highlights, she felt a wave of repulsion. This was the man who left her in a burning building. Yet here he was, boasting about his transparent and forward-thinking approach to global investments. Clenching her teeth, Naomi let him spin his sales pitch. Eventually, she placed a folder on the desk, a printout of damning financial records Danielle had provided. "I've done my research, Mr. Westbrook," she said, modulating her voice to be unrecognizably low. "And I find certain transactions concerning." Lance frowned, flipping through the sheets. Naomi watched his expression shift from confusion to alarm. He tried to mask it with a confident sneer. "I'm not sure where you got these documents, Miss Khalid, but they're out of context." A surge of satisfaction lanced through Naomi. She allowed her glasses to slip slightly, revealing a glimpse of her eyes. "Tell me, Lance," she said quietly, dropping the fake accent. "Do you remember the fire at your countryside manor? The one where your pregnant wife supposedly died?" He froze, color draining from his face. For an agonizing heartbeat, confusion warred with terror. Recognition flickered. Naomi removed her glasses fully, letting him see the faint scar tracing her temple. His breath caught. Naomi?" he stammered, voice cracking. She savored the panic that contorted his features. Trembling with rage, she leaned forward, voice tight. "I survived. And so did our child. Your entire world is about to implode. Enjoy your final moments of power, Lance, because they're almost over." For days after the confrontation, Lance lived in dread. He cancelled his London trip, frantically meeting with lawyers and private investigators to contain any fallout. He tried to track Naomi down, suspecting she'd gone underground. But his resources came up short. She was elusive, guarded by Colin's network. All he could do was press forward with his glamorous engagement gala at the Plaza Hotel, hoping to salvage his image. Serafina and her father insisted the show must go on, a demonstration of resilience and wealth in the face of rumor. Lance, sleepless and paranoid, reluctantly agreed. The night of the gala, the plaza's grand ballroom sparkled with crystal chandeliers and elegantly set tables. 6 arrived in designer gowns and black tie suits, greeted by paparazzi thronging the hotel entrance. Lance moved through the crowd mechanically, forced smiles plastered on his face. Serafina clung to his arm, oblivious to the personal crisis roiling beneath his polished veneer. He noticed a heavier security presence, presumably hired by Serafina's father to ensure no unpleasant surprises marred their big announcement. But Naomi was already inside, hidden among the staff. Colin had secured a catering uniform for her, complete with a cap that concealed her hair and partially shadowed her face. Danielle mingled nearby with a forged press pass, a camera around her neck. It was a well-orchestrated infiltration, timed down to the minute. Naomi's heart hammered as she carried champagne flutes across the parquet floor. She spotted Lance and Serafina greeting guests at the dais. The sight of them stung like a fresh wound, but her fury gave her focus. As dinner concluded, a hush fell. Serafina's father took the microphone, welcoming everyone. He launched into a glowing endorsement of Lance, praising his brilliance and philanthropic spirit. Then Lance stepped up, forced to deliver a speech about love, partnership, and the future. The hypocrisy made Naomi's blood boil. At that moment, Colin signaled from the back of the room. Danielle poised her camera, and Naomi steeled herself. She walked to the center of the ballroom, ignoring staff who told her to wait outside. She approached a large projection screen that had been set up for a celebratory slideshow. Before security could intercept, Danielle cued a hidden laptop feed. The screen flickered images of incriminating emails, fraudulent bank statements, and a flurry of official documents exposing Westbrook Capital's crimes. The crowd gasped. Lance spun around, eyes bulging in horror. He tried to wave security over, but Naomi stepped forward, removing her cap, letting the overhead lights reveal her scarred face. Gasps rippled through the room. Some recognized her from society pages as Lance's long-lost wife. "Allow me to introduce myself," Naomi said, voice clear despite her racing heartbeat. "I am Naomi Westbrook, left for dead by this man. and I have evidence he's committed fraud, bribery, and more. The man you celebrate tonight is a monster. Pandemonium erupted. Cameras flashed, reporters shouted, Serafina recoiled, shock etched across her face. Lance staggered, swallowing convulsively, as if the oxygen had been sucked from the room. Naomi felt a fierce triumph. Her final blow was imminent, and nothing, no amount of money or power could douse the flames of justice she had ignited. The ballroom descended into chaos. Security guards surged forward, but the media pounced too, capturing every angle of the scandal unfolding. Flashes lit up Naomi's determined face and Lance's shell-shocked expression. Guests scrambled to distance themselves from the disgraced millionaire. Serafina's father stood rooted in disbelief, cursing under his breath as he realized the magnitude of Lance's downfall. Naomi pivoted to face the cameras, brandishing copies of the documents that Danielle had helped compile. "This is the man you revered," she stated, voice steely. "He left me, his pregnant wife, in a burning building. He's defrauded investors, bribed officials, and stolen from honest people." She paused, her gaze sweeping across the silent crowd. "I survived barely. Our daughter survived too, thanks to the mercy of strangers. Now, let the world know who Lance Westbrook truly is." Police officers arrived, tipped off by Colin's team about potential criminal evidence. Colin himself stood in the background, arms folded, handing over a neatly labeled dossier to the lead detective. Officers approached Lance, who was too stunned to resist, as they led him aside for questioning. His face was ashen, words failing him. He glanced at Naomi one final time, eyes brimming with a mixture of panic and a glimmer of regret. From the corner of her eye, Naomi noticed Serafina trembling, tears streaking her mascara. Serafina stared at Naomi, fear mingling with an odd respect. But Naomi had no time for pity. Her vengeance was complete. She watched as Lance tried to stammer denials, but the weight of evidence smothered any chance of escape. The press devoured every detail, broadcasting the fall of a financial titan who, until this very moment, appeared untouchable. In the aftermath, authorities froze Westbrook Capital's assets, pending a full investigation. Lawsuits from shareholders multiplied. Lance faced charges ranging from fraud to endangering human life. His carefully curated empire began to collapse overnight, major clients fleeing in droves. Serafina and her father, desperate to protect their own name, distanced themselves from Lance. Their alliance, once seen as unstoppable, fractured under the scorching glare of truth. Naomi, although battered by her own ordeal, felt a powerful release. The vengeance she'd nurtured had found its perfect stage. Still, a quiet sadness lingered. She never wanted to become a person who thrived on destruction, but Lance's betrayal demanded a reckoning. Now she could finally move forward, her child safe, her conscience free of the lie that was once her marriage. In the days that followed, Naomi returned to her modest apartment. Luna lay in a cradle by the window, sunlight dancing across her innocent face. The infant cooed as Naomi leaned over, placing a gentle kiss on her forehead. She knew challenges remained: financial stability, physical and emotional healing from the trauma. But she also knew her strength, tempered by the fire that tried to consume her. Gazing at the city skyline beyond, Naomi resolved to rebuild her life from the ashes. She wasn't the naive architect student who fell for a heartless millionaire's charm. She was a survivor, a mother, and a woman who'd proven that karma might be slow, but it is always certain. And in that knowledge, she found peace. Fate has a way of leveling even the tallest towers built on lies. Lance Westbrook learned that wealth and power cannot shield one from the consequences of a callous heart. In the end, his empire collapsed under the weight of its own deceit, leaving him exposed and alone. Naomi, once a loving wife, channeled her suffering into the flames of determination. emerging stronger as both a mother and a survivor. Her courage became a beacon, proving that truth and resilience can triumph over betrayal.
Have you ever wondered how one scandalous leak could destroy an entire empire overnight? Picture this. A stunning millionaire, revered as a philanthropic tycoon, and his radiant pregnant wife, seemingly the perfect power couple. But beneath the glossy photographs and luxurious charity galas, dark secrets simmer. When an explosive video surfaces online, revealing her husband's steamy affair, the pregnant wife doesn't crumble in silence. Instead, she steps into the blinding lights of a press conference, shocking the world and obliterating his career in a single heartbeat. Get ready for a tale of betrayal, resilience, and a downfall so swift it will leave you breathless. Ava Carmichael first met Oliver Carmichael at a fundraiser for the Wilson Children's Hospital in Chicago. Oliver was the guest of honor, a self-made millionaire who had gained national fame after selling his tech startup to Google for a fortune rumored to be in the hundreds of millions. Ava, then a junior event planner, was charged with ensuring the evening ran smoothly. From the moment she locked eyes with him across the packed ballroom, her world shifted. He approached her with a gentle smile and an outstretched hand. Polite conversation turned into an exchange of dreams and life goals. The chemistry between them was electric. Oliver, charming yet aloof, was drawn to Ava's warm-hearted nature and pragmatic approach to life. Their whirlwind romance made headlines in society pages when Oliver took Ava to a private island in the Caribbean. Photos of them strolling barefoot on a secluded beach landed in People magazine, and whispers of an engagement soon surfaced in tabloids. By the time he proposed under a canopy of twinkling fairy lights in front of 1,000 roses, Ava was head over heels. The wedding was a grand affair at the historic Drake Hotel, with the CEO of Morgan Stanley among the guests, and a performance by a famous R&B singer that Oliver secretly flew in. Their union was hailed as a modern fairy tale, the philanthropic tech millionaire and the compassionate event planner uniting their energies to make the world a better place. But in every fairy tale lurks a moment of darkness, and for Ava and Oliver, it was just around the corner. A year after their lavish wedding, Ava discovered she was pregnant. The news filled the Carmichael mansion with excitement. Oliver appeared overjoyed. He'd often spoken of wanting a large family, and Ava was ecstatic to finally be starting that journey with him. They announced the pregnancy during a red carpet charity gala benefiting children with rare diseases. Ava wore a flowing emerald green gown that discreetly showed off a blossoming baby bump. When she and Oliver stepped onto the stage, the entire crowd erupted in applause. Cameras flashed, capturing the moment Oliver placed a tender hand on Ava's stomach. Soon after, local outlets like the Chicago Tribune covered the Carmichael baby buzz, praising Oliver for his ongoing philanthropic endeavors. A short feature on NBC's Today Show hinted that the Carmichaels might become America's new it couple. Ava was flattered, albeit slightly overwhelmed by the sudden attention. Behind the scenes, however, something was off. Oliver had become more distant, engrossed in late-night phone calls and cryptic text messages. When Ava asked about them, he brushed her concerns aside with practiced ease. "It's just business, sweetheart." She tried to believe him. After all, she knew the burden of running a multi-million-dollar conglomerate was enormous. But as her belly grew, so did her suspicions. Faint clues, the lingering trace of unfamiliar perfume on his collar. A second phone he never let her see gnawed at her peace of mind. Still, Ava reassured herself that any man under immense pressure could behave evasively. She clung to hope that once their baby arrived, Oliver would slow down and refocus on their family. Little did she know the cracks forming in their marriage were about to split wide open. With each passing week of her pregnancy, Ava noticed that Oliver's schedule became more erratic. Some nights he would rush through dinner offering half-hearted compliments about her cooking and then dash off to emergency meetings. Other times he'd claim to be traveling for business expansions, leaving Ava alone in their expansive mansion, the echo of her own footsteps, a constant reminder of her isolation. What truly unsettled Ava was the subtle shift in Oliver's demeanor. He was no longer the attentive husband who'd once tracked down her favorite bakery an hour away to bring her freshly baked croissants. Instead, he seemed perpetually preoccupied, scrolling his phone under the dinner table, offering only partial attention to Ava's excited updates about the baby's kicks. In an attempt to distract herself from mounting worries, Ava threw herself into philanthropic work. She organized a fundraiser for hurricane relief, collaborating with real-life crisis manager and PR expert Liz White, a name well known in Chicago's elite circles for orchestrating big fundraising galas. Liz noticed Ava's tense smile and asked if everything was okay at home. Ava merely shrugged it off with a practiced grin. Little did Ava know Liz would soon become more than just a professional acquaintance. Liz's skill in handling scandals and public image crises would be invaluable when the Carmichael family's private pain exploded onto the public stage. For now, Ava remained clueless about the danger simmering beneath the surface. She believed the biggest concern she faced was coaxing Oliver to show up on time for doctor's appointments, but in the hush of her mind, a quiet fear took root. If Oliver was pushing her away, who or what was he pulling closer? Ava never considered herself a snoop. She valued privacy and believed that trust was the bedrock of any strong relationship. But as uncertainty haunted her nights, she found herself unable to resist the urge to peek into Oliver's world. One evening, when Oliver announced yet another urgent meeting and sped off in his car, Ava was left in the large, empty mansion, feeling the baby stir inside her. The sense of foreboding was unbearable. She walked into his home office, a spacious, modern study lined with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city skyline. Her eyes landed on his desktop computer, which glowed with a faint screensaver. With trembling hands, she jiggled the mouse. To her surprise, no password prompt appeared. The desktop opened immediately to an email account. A pang of guilt clutched her, but desperation drove her to click. Most messages were innocuous business correspondences, but a name caught her eye. Miranda Devereaux, a high-profile interior designer from New York. Ava recalled Oliver mentioning Miranda once, someone he was hiring for a new condo project. She clicked on the email thread and found an exchange of flirtatious notes, culminating in a few short video clips. Heart pounding. Ava hesitated before opening them. The first clip showed Oliver at a hotel bar, with Miranda leaning in intimately. The second clip was longer security camera footage from the hotel corridor. It showed Oliver and Miranda entering a suite together late at night, arms wrapped around each other. A wave of nausea overwhelmed Ava, nearly overshadowing the usual pregnancy queasiness. Without a second thought, she pressed forward and sent the emails and clips to herself. She had seen enough, and her world would never be the same again. Oliver returned well past midnight, reeking of expensive cologne. The moment he stepped inside, Ava's tears were already running down her cheeks. She waited for him in the living room. The lights dimmed to a cold glow. Her hands gripped her phone, the forwarded videos ready to play at any second. Ava, he called, visibly startled by her tear-streaked face. "What's wrong?" She didn't bother with niceties. Heart pounding, she pressed play on her phone, letting the damning footage speak for itself. The room filled with the muffled sounds of Oliver's laughter in that hotel corridor, Miranda's figure clinging to his arm. Oliver's eyes widened, a flicker of panic crossing his usually controlled features. He reached for the phone. "Where did you get this?" he demanded, voice tight. Ava yanked it away, raw hurt radiating in her gaze. "So it's true," she breathed. "You've been cheating on me. With her." At first, Oliver tried to deny it. Words like misunderstanding and business acquaintance tumbled from his mouth. But the evidence was incontrovertible. Finally, he sank onto the sofa, running a hand through his hair. It was just once he muttered, eyes downcast. "A mistake. You have to believe me." Ava's indignation flared. "A mistake. You've been emailing her for months from what I can see." "Don't lie to me, Oliver. Not now." He bowed his head, too ashamed or too trapped to continue. Furious tears streamed down Ava's face, and she felt the baby kick within her, a cruel reminder of the life she carried, the future she was trying to protect. In that instant, the fairy tale they'd built shattered into pieces, leaving Ava with only heartbreak and betrayal. Ava spent the night in the guest bedroom, barely sleeping. Every time she closed her eyes, the images of Oliver with Miranda replayed like a cruel nightmare. By dawn, she felt hollowed out, yet beneath the grief grew a potent anger she had never experienced before. Before Oliver left for work the next day, she confronted him in the kitchen. She was still in her pajamas, hair disheveled, a world away from the poised socialite she'd become known as in Chicago's charity circuit. "End it," Ava demanded, voice quivering with anger. "Break it off with Miranda for good, and tell the press you're stepping down from the Devereaux project, and you'll be going to marriage counseling with me." Oliver looked at her for a long moment. He seemed more fatigued than she had ever seen him. "I'll end it, Ava," he promised, exhaling sharply. "I don't want to lose our family." The words should have comforted her, but they didn't. The betrayal ran too deep. "I'm pregnant with your child, Oliver. Do you even understand what this stress is doing to me, to our baby?" His silence spoke louder than any defense he could muster. He offered a half-hearted nod before leaving. Ava watched him go, unsure if she had just saved their marriage or delayed its collapse. Though she demanded a swift end to his infidelity, a haunting question nagged at her. Could trust ever be fully repaired once it was broken? Little did she know the storm was only beginning, and a single promise from Oliver would do little to protect them from the catastrophe that awaited. Unable to bear the suffocating loneliness of the mansion, Ava sought solace with her closest friend, Delilah Pierce. They met at a cozy neighborhood cafe, where Delilah arrived with open arms and a wave of concern evident in her eyes. In hushed tones, Ava recounted the entire saga from the suspicious late nights to the damning hotel footage. Delilah listened occasionally, clutching Ava's hand, her coffee growing cold. "I always had a bad feeling about Oliver's constant business trips," she admitted, a note of regret in her voice. "I'm sorry I never brought it up." Ava found some measure of comfort in Delilah's empathy. "I feel so stupid," she said, tears threatening to spill once more. "How could I not see it sooner?" Delilah gave Ava's hand a firm squeeze. "Don't blame yourself. Oliver's the one who made this choice. You're carrying his child. You deserved better." Over the next hour, Delilah offered unwavering support, suggesting therapy resources, and even offering to help Ava prepare for any potential legal issues. "You have to protect yourself, especially with the baby on the way. I know a great lawyer, Samantha Holden, who handled my cousin's messy divorce, just in case." Though the mention of a lawyer made Ava's stomach churn, she recognized the importance of covering all her bases. As they parted ways, Delilah vowed to stand by her side through the ordeal, no matter how ugly it got. Walking back to her car, Ava felt slightly less isolated, but the protective bubble of friendship could only do so much. She would have to face the storm head-on, whether Oliver kept his promise or not. A few days later, the hush of early morning was shattered by Ava's phone, buzzing relentlessly on the bedside table. She groggily picked it up to see dozens of messages and missed calls. Her heart pounded. Could something have happened to Oliver? But as she opened social media, dread coiled in her stomach. A gossip account with thousands of followers had posted a scandalous blind item about a tech mogul with a pregnant wife caught in an affair with a New York socialite. The post included grainy stills from the very hotel footage Ava had discovered, though faces were blurred. Her phone exploded with notifications, friends, acquaintances, even random strangers wanting details. Overwhelmed, Ava felt the baby move as though sensing the turmoil. She quickly turned off her phone, tears stinging her eyes. In a panic, she rushed downstairs to find Oliver. He was in his office phone, pressed to his ear, shouting into the receiver. She overheard him say, "I don't care what it costs, just kill the story," before slamming the phone down. Their gazes locked. Ava's heart sank at the desperation etched across his features. "Someone leaked it?" she asked, voice trembling. He nodded grimly. "Yes, but we can't be certain who. It might be someone from the hotel staff or someone else." He shot her a look, as if suspecting she had shared the video. Ava bristled, stepping back. "Do you really think I'd do that? You promised to end this, Oliver. Now look what's happening." Guilt flashed across his face, replaced almost instantly by defensiveness. "We need to put out a statement denying everything. My entire career could be on the line." Ava swallowed hard. She wasn't ready for the media circus, but it was already knocking at their door. Their once private nightmare was about to go very, very public. Oliver scrambled to manage the crisis, summoning his high-profile PR team, led by the formidable Kate Winthrop, a specialist in damage control for celebrity and corporate scandals. Within hours, she arrived at the Carmichael mansion, with a flurry of assistants' laptops and a meticulously organized crisis management plan. "We're dealing with an unverified leak," Kate said briskly. "We have two primary strategies: deny or deflect. If we deny, you risk fueling the rumor mill. If we deflect, we might direct attention elsewhere, but it has to be believable." Oliver paced the room, raking a hand through his hair. "What about claiming these images are doctored? That this is just an attempt to undermine my philanthropic work?" Kate's expression remained neutral. "We can try that, but the pictures look too authentic. And if more footage surfaces, we'll be caught lying." Ava observed the meeting from a corner, her mind swirling. She felt like a spectator at the unveiling of her own heartbreak, reduced to a mere prop in Oliver's PR strategy. As talk of hush money and NDAs swirled, she felt the baby kick a stark reminder that this crisis was not just about reputations, but the future of her family. Eventually, Oliver turned to her. "Ava, I need you to stand by my side. We have to present a united front." His words were a bitter pill. She recalled his promise to end the affair. Yet here they were, strategizing about half-truths and misdirection. Ava thought of the unborn child, of the intense scrutiny they would soon face. With shaky resolve, she nodded. She hated the idea of lying to the public, but she also couldn't bear the thought of the scandal smashing their life to bits. She had no idea that the worst was still to come. Even as Oliver's PR team prepared an official statement, labeling the footage misleading and maliciously edited, a new crisis brewed behind the scenes. Miranda Devereaux. The woman at the center of the scandal refused to quietly fade away. Instead, she began making demands of her own. One evening, Oliver returned home from an emergency meeting with Miranda's lawyers. Ava watched his strained face as he poured himself a stiff drink. "She's threatening to release a full statement," he muttered. "Claims she's got text messages, voice memos, everything. She wants compensation, or she'll go public." Ava felt an icy dread settle in her stomach. If Miranda released more evidence, the shallow denials being fed to the media would crumble instantly. "So what are you going to do?" she asked, voice tight. Oliver's silence was telling. He tossed back his drink before answering. "We're negotiating. She wants a huge sum, plus some endorsement deals for her design business. It's extortion, basically." The thought of Oliver paying off Miranda made Ava's skin crawl. "And you're seriously considering it?" He ran a hand over his face. "If it means saving my reputation, yes. You don't understand what's at stake. Our philanthropic work, my investments, people rely on me. If I go down, a lot of people will be hurt." For a split second, Ava wondered if Miranda was truly the villain here. After all, she hadn't vowed to be faithful. Oliver had. The line between right and wrong blurred beneath the weight of scandal, greed, and betrayal. In that moment, Ava realized that Oliver's talk of saving his reputation might overshadow his concern for their marriage or the innocent child they were bringing into a world of lies. Waking up to relentless texts and calls from acquaintances, Ava found her anxiety hitting new heights. Even visits to her OB/GYN became fraught with tension as she feared being recognized and judged. Everywhere she went, it felt like eyes were on her analyzing the scandal. Social media was ablaze with speculation. A few brave tabloids even claimed to have exclusive new evidence pending release. The constant swirl of rumors left Ava hollow and exhausted. Did half of Chicago already assume Oliver was cheating? Did they pity her, or worse, mock her for staying alone in her bedroom? Ava scrolled through her phone, scanning social media. She came across a tweet from Anderson Cooper, a real-life figure known for calling out hypocrisy on his CNN segments, commenting generally about the moral failings of the wealthy and powerful. Although it didn't mention Oliver by name, the timing was suspiciously pointed. She felt a spike of anxiety. Ava found herself questioning everything she thought she knew. How many times had Oliver lied? Was he truly remorseful or just scrambling to hide his tracks? And what if Miranda wasn't the only affair? The seeds of doubt took root, thriving in the soil of shattered trust. One thing became undeniable. If this story escalated further, Oliver's polished facade would collapse. The philanthropic golden boy would be exposed as a fraud, and Ava would be caught in the crossfire. For the sake of her baby, she had to find a way to protect herself, even if it meant going against the man she had once adored. Just as Kate Winthrop and her crisis team finalized a hopefully worded statement for Oliver to deliver, the bomb dropped. Late one evening, a popular YouTube channel called City Secrets Unmasked posted the unedited high-definition version of the hotel footage. This time, the camera angle was clear as day. Oliver's face was unmistakable, laughing, leaning in, whispering to Miranda, before disappearing into a room. Within minutes, the video was trending. National outlets picked it up, and Twitter erupted with the hashtag Carmichael Scandal. Oliver's name soared to the top of search engines, overshadowing even major political news. Ava watched the chaos unfold from the living room television, the baby's weight pressing on her ribs as if in response to her stress. She felt an overwhelming desire to flee to escape the relentless spotlight. But this was her life. There was nowhere to hide from the digital mob. Within hours, the Carmichael mansion was besieged by paparazzi. Some had the audacity to shout questions about her pregnancy, insinuating that the unborn child might not even be Oliver's. Ava gasped at the cruelty. The speculation stung like an open wound. Oliver was unreachable, holed up in his corporate office downtown, bombarded by phone calls from investors and lawyers. Alone. Ava cradled her belly tears, silently rolling down her face. The humiliation was staggering. She wondered, had Oliver realized in his pursuit of forbidden thrills that the collateral damage would be so immense as the scandal spread beyond the local Chicago scene? Ava knew one thing for sure: there was no more denying or deflecting. The world had just gotten a front-row seat to their marital nightmare. Desperate to hear Oliver's side of the story, and furious at his vanishing act, Ava summoned her strength and drove to the headquarters of Carmichael Innovations, located in a sleek, glass-paneled tower in the heart of downtown Chicago. Security guards recognized her instantly and allowed her up, though they exchanged anxious glances. Inside Oliver's office, she found him in a tense meeting with his board of directors. They huddled around a massive mahogany table, glowering at him as if he were a pariah. The room fell silent when Ava walked in her visibly pregnant figure, a jarring reminder of the personal turmoil overshadowing their corporate meltdown. "Gentlemen," Oliver began, attempting composure. "This is my wife, Ava." She faced them chin high, despite the dread curling in her stomach. "Could I speak to my husband alone?" she asked softly, though her eyes burned with determination. Most of the board members exited without protest, some casting disapproving looks at Oliver. Once they were gone, Ava unleashed the questions that had kept her awake at night. "You said you'd end things, but the world has proof that you didn't. How could you lie to me again?" Oliver rubbed his temples, eyes bloodshot from stress. Miranda was supposed to keep it quiet. She swore she wouldn't let it get this far. "I tried to fix it, Ava, I really did." His words only stoked her fury. "All you did was attempt to bury the truth with money," she said, voice trembling. "You've destroyed our marriage, our child's future, everything." They stared at each other across the empty boardroom. For the first time, Oliver's confident mask cracked, revealing a man trapped by his own misdeeds. "What do you want me to do?" he finally asked, voice hollow. Ava couldn't answer. She was no longer sure there was anything left he could do to make this right. In the ensuing days, the corporate fallout grew dire. Prominent investors in Carmichael Innovations withdrew support, worried about the scandal's impact on share prices. Philanthropic partners quietly severed ties, not wishing to be associated with an affair so brazenly exposed. Oliver spent most nights at the office attempting to salvage deals. The mansion felt more like a tomb than a home. Paparazzi still lurked outside the gates, waiting for a glimpse of the troubled couple. Ava found herself pacing the halls, mind whirling with uncertainty. A scheduled charity event for the Wilson Children's Hospital. A cause close to both Oliver and Ava dropped Oliver from the speaker lineup. This move spoke volumes. If even the hospital Oliver once championed was distancing itself, he was rapidly running out of allies. Realizing that her own philanthropic work was now at risk of being overshadowed by scandal, Ava called Liz White, the crisis manager she had worked with months ago. Over coffee in a secluded part of the city, Ava poured out her worries about the baby, the paparazzi, and the unrelenting media scrutiny. Liz listened sympathetically. You need to start thinking about your own image, Ava, not just Oliver's. Because right now everyone sees you as the victim. But if this keeps spiraling, they might start seeing you as complicit or naive. Ava swallowed hard. She didn't want a war with Oliver, but it was becoming clear she needed to protect herself and her unborn child. She left that meeting with Liz, knowing she had to make some hard decisions, and soon. By now, the Carmichael scandal was headline news across major networks. CNN's Anderson Cooper, having previously hinted at the moral failings of the powerful, dedicated a segment specifically to Oliver's downfall, inviting legal and ethical experts to weigh in. The public response was brutal. Many saw Oliver as the epitome of hypocritical arrogance, preaching philanthropy, while betraying his pregnant wife behind closed doors. At the mansion, Ava tried to maintain some semblance of normalcy. She kept her prenatal appointments, attempted to rest, and even started decorating the nursery in a soft palette of yellows and greys. Yet every trip out was a gauntlet of flashing cameras and shouted questions. She began dreading the very thought of leaving home. One particular morning, the tension became unbearable. Oliver returned from another fruitless series of investor meetings, shoulders slumped. When he saw Ava packing a suitcase in the master bedroom, a flash of panic ignited in his eyes. "What are you doing?" he asked, voice trembling. "I'm going to stay with Delilah for a while," she replied, zipping the suitcase shut. "I need space. This environment isn't healthy for me or the baby." Oliver opened his mouth to protest, but no words came out. Instead, he deflated like a punctured balloon, slumping against the doorway. "Ava, please," he finally managed. "I'm losing everything. I can't lose you too." She looked at him, sadness washing over her. "I wish you'd thought of that before, Miranda. I need time to figure out if there's anything left worth saving." His eyes brimmed with tears, but he said nothing more. Ava dragged her suitcase down the grand staircase, stepping out into the barrage of paparazzi alone, her heart heavy with betrayal and sorrow. It was during Ava's stay at Delilah's cozy brownstone that she received a phone call from a blocked number. Although she usually avoided unknown calls, something compelled her to answer. A soft voice introduced itself. "This is Miranda Devereaux. Please don't hang up." Shock rendered Ava momentarily mute. Her pulse hammered in her ears. Why would Miranda call her directly? She contemplated ending the call, but couldn't resist her curiosity. "What do you want?" she asked, struggling to keep her voice steady. Miranda sighed on the other end. "Believe it or not, I never intended for this mess to go public. Someone else got hold of the security footage. I can't say more without jeopardizing my safety, but I wanted you to know it wasn't me who leaked it." Ava's throat tightened. "That doesn't change what happened or how you and Oliver—" She paused, tears threatening. "You ruined my marriage, my life." A moment of silence passed. "I understand you hate me," Miranda said quietly. "But I'm calling because there's something else you should know. Oliver has been hiding more than just our affair. He's in deep trouble legally and financially. I'm sure you've noticed the deals collapsing around him. It's not just because of the scandal, there's a federal probe into his finances. Tax evasion, money laundering, I'm not certain. But it's serious." A swirl of nausea hit Ava. The idea that Oliver's downfall was bigger than an affair blindsided her. "How do you know this?" she finally managed. Miranda hesitated. "Let's just say I overheard some conversations." "Be careful, Ava. If the feds get involved, they won't hesitate to come after anyone close to Oliver, even you." Before Ava could respond, the line clicked off. She stared at her phone, heart racing with a new dread. Oliver's betrayal might pale in comparison to a looming legal catastrophe, and she was now unwittingly entangled in it. Miranda's warning weighed heavily on Ava's mind. She remembered Delilah's earlier recommendation to consult a lawyer. After days of sleepless nights, she mustered the courage to do just that. Through Delilah's referral, she met Samantha Holden, a skilled divorce attorney, known for her tenacity in high-profile cases. They met in Samantha's sleek downtown office, shielded from prying paparazzi. Sitting across from the polished oak desk, Ava felt her cheeks burn with humiliation as she recounted Oliver's affair and Miranda's foreboding message about the feds. Samantha took thorough notes, her brow furrowed. "This is bigger than just infidelity, Ava. If Oliver is facing a federal investigation for financial crimes, you need to protect your interests. If marital funds are implicated, the government could freeze assets." The words froze Ava's blood. "I don't know the first thing about these allegations. I'm pregnant. I just want my baby to be safe." Samantha offered a sympathetic smile. "I understand. My advice is to quietly file for legal separation. That way you create a clear line between your finances and Oliver's. If he's in legal jeopardy, it may protect you and your child from any fallout. And if things get worse, we can move forward with a full divorce." Though the idea of legally distancing herself from Oliver filled Ava with sadness. She knew it might be her only chance at safeguarding her child's future. With trembling hands, she signed an engagement letter, officially hiring Samantha as her attorney. As she left the office, a flurry of mixed emotions assailed her: grief for the marriage she once cherished, anger at Oliver's deceptions, and a glimmer of relief that she was finally taking control of her own fate. In the aftermath of the leaked video, Oliver's reputation took a nosedive. Investors fled in droves, stock prices for Carmichael Innovations tumbled, and philanthropic projects froze. The media was relentless, and yet the public had not heard directly from Ava beyond a few brief sightings and no-comment statements. The tabloids, sniffing blood, began speculating wildly. Was Ava quietly arranging a divorce settlement? Had Oliver threatened her into silence? Some articles even suggested that her pregnancy was a fabricated ruse to garner sympathy. When Liz White, the crisis manager, called to check on Ava, she proposed a bold solution. "Ava, you need to tell your side of the story in your own words. Let the world see you're not just a silent, suffering wife." Ava hesitated. Standing in front of a microphone, addressing a horde of reporters while pregnant, no less, sounded terrifying. But Liz's argument made sense. The rumor mill was devouring her in absentia, and with Oliver refusing to come clean about his affair or financial dealings, it might be time to cut ties publicly. "I'll do it," Ava finally said, surprising even herself with her resolve. "But I'm not lying or covering for Oliver anymore. I'll tell the truth just enough to protect myself and my baby." Liz agreed, her voice brimming with encouragement. "Leave the logistics to me. I'll arrange a controlled press conference, minimal chaos. But be ready. Once you open that door, there's no going back." Ava closed her eyes, feeling the baby move. She understood the gravity of her choice. This wasn't just about clearing her name, it was about reclaiming her identity and ensuring her child wouldn't be born into a vortex of secrets. In the days leading up to the press conference, Ava resided in a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. She prepared statements with Liz White, conferred with Samantha Holden, and braced herself for the inevitable media frenzy. All the while she heard almost nothing from Oliver. Then on the eve of her scheduled press appearance, she received a late-night phone call. It was Oliver, his voice shaking with desperation. "Ava, please don't do this. Don't go public." It'll ruin any chance I have left to fix things. She steadied herself, fighting back tears. You've had every opportunity to fix this, Oliver. You chose not to. This press conference isn't about vengeance. It's about protecting myself and our baby. The silence on the other end was palpable. Finally, he spoke, a voice hollow. I understand you're angry. But you have no idea the legal mess I'm in. A public spectacle will just invite scrutiny. It could land me behind bars. A hollow laugh escaped Ava's lips. That's not my fault. You did this to yourself. Oliver's next words chilled her. If you ruin me, you ruin the future of this family. Think about that before you step in front of those cameras. She hung up, breathing heavily, as if she'd just run a marathon. For a moment, doubt tugged at her. She still cared for the father of her child, even after all his betrayals. But the time for illusions was over. Ava swallowed the lump in her throat and reminded herself why she was doing this, to clear her name, to safeguard her baby's future. Oliver had made his bed. Tomorrow, the world would finally hear her side. Morning dawned on Chicago gray clouds gathering in the sky, as if foretelling the tumultuous day ahead. Despite the swirling anxiety in her chest, Ava felt an unexpected sense of calm. She'd chosen a simple but elegant maternity dress in a soft ivory shade, the color symbolizing a fresh start in her mind. Liz White and Samantha Holden met her at the small conference venue, an airy minimalist space rented for the occasion. They'd intentionally avoided the grandiosity of a hotel ballroom, hoping to keep the focus on Ava's message rather than ostentatious surroundings. Security guards milled about outside, ensuring the event remained somewhat contained. Inside, journalists from major outlets like CNN. The Chicago Tribune and local TV stations fidgeted with microphones. Cameras were poised, ready to broadcast every second. The hush in the room was electric. Ava's heart drummed like thunder in her ears. She kept a hand on her belly, drawing strength from the life growing within. As Liz guided her onto the small stage, Ava spotted a handful of supportive faces in the front row. Delilah Samantha, and even a hospital representative from Wilson Children's Hospital who had come to show solidarity. Taking a steadying breath, Ava stepped behind the podium. Flashbulbs sparked, and a wave of murmurs filled the room. The tension was thick like a coiled spring on the verge of releasing. It was time to speak her truth, not just about the affair, but about the flawed man behind the philanthropic facade and the toll his secrets had taken on her life. The calm before the storm was over. Ava Carmichael was about to face the world head-on. The conference room fell silent as Ava approached the microphone. For a moment, she simply stood there, letting the bright camera lights and hushed anticipation wash over her. "Good morning," she began, voice trembling slightly. "I'm Ava Carmichael. I'm here to address the rumors and speculation regarding my marriage to Oliver Carmichael." Eyes from every corner of the room locked onto her. Journalists leaned forward, pens poised. Cameras zoomed in, capturing every flicker of emotion. Ava's heart pounded like a drum, but she pressed on. She spoke of her pregnancy, how she had longed to start a family in a loving, stable home. She confessed that Oliver's affair was both devastating and humiliating, that she had discovered undeniable proof of his betrayal. She explained that while she once considered standing by him, his continued deception and the possibility of deeper legal entanglements made it impossible for her to remain silent. At one point, a wave of emotion gripped her. Ava paused, tears threatening to cloud her vision. She glanced at Delilah, who offered a reassuring nod. Summoning her courage, Ava continued. "I'm not here for revenge," she clarified, voice growing steadier. "I'm here to protect my child and to separate myself from the lies that have come to light. Any future decisions, including legal ones, will be made with the well-being of my baby in mind." When she finished, the room erupted in questions. Liz stepped in, reminding reporters to keep their inquiries respectful and that Ava's attorney would handle anything pertaining to potential lawsuits. Ava exhaled, her body trembling with relief and nerves. She had done it. She'd laid bare her pain, her intentions, her truth. At that moment, she had no idea how drastically this single press conference would alter the course of Oliver's life and hers. Ava's press conference ricocheted through the media like a lightning strike. Clipped segments ran on national news networks. The full recording went viral on YouTube. Social media platforms erupted with support, condemnation, and endless debate. Hashtags like "Stand with Ava" and "Carmichael Collapse" trended simultaneously. Public perception of Oliver flipped almost overnight. People who once admired him for his charitable work now saw him as a manipulative hypocrite. The sincerity in Ava's statement made it clear she was not seeking revenge, but merely staking her claim to dignity and security for her unborn child. A day after the press conference, CNN's Anderson Cooper weighed in again, praising Ava for her courage and condemning the toxic culture that allowed powerful men to evade accountability. The Chicago Tribune published an op-ed titled "The Strength of Ava Carmichael, Lauding Her Poise Under Pressure." Corporate repercussions were swift. A major investment round that Oliver had been courting fell apart. The few remaining partners in Carmichael Innovations distanced themselves, hastily removing Oliver's name from promotional materials and websites. Even philanthropic boards started voting him out to preserve their reputations. Ava watched the news unfold from Delilah's living room. It felt surreal to witness the magnitude of the fallout she had unleashed by simply speaking her truth. A twinge of guilt gnawed at her. Oliver's downfall was monumental, and part of her still cared about the father of her child. But she couldn't deny the satisfaction of finally freeing herself from complicity in his deception. Little did she realize the next blow in this unraveling saga would come not from tabloid headlines, but from a place with the power to permanently reshape Oliver's destiny and, by extension, her own. Just when the media firestorm seemed at its peak, another bombshell dropped. The U.S. Attorney's Office announced a federal investigation into Carmichael Innovations. News broke that Oliver Carmichael was being indicted on charges of tax evasion, wire fraud, and securities fraud. The timing, mere days after Ava's press conference, sent shockwaves through financial circles. Cameras swarmed outside the federal courthouse as Oliver was spotted arriving with his legal team, forced to enter a plea in front of a judge. The humiliating spectacle was broadcast live, capturing every grimace and tense exchange. The very networks that once celebrated Oliver's philanthropic feats now tracked his every misstep. Ava learned of the indictment through a news alert on her phone. Her stomach churned. She sat on Delilah's couch, phone in hand, and watched the live coverage. Oliver looked haggard shadows under his eyes, the weight of impending consequences etched into his every movement. The charges carried severe penalties, if convicted. Oliver faced the possibility of a long prison sentence. This was beyond mere scandal. It was a life-altering reckoning. Yet the indictments also served as a shield for Ava. With formal charges laid against Oliver, Samantha Holden moved swiftly to bolster Ava's separation case, ensuring none of the allegedly laundered funds were connected to Ava or her unborn child. As the news cameras pivoted from sensational gossip to grave legal analysis, Ava felt a swirl of conflicting emotions. Relief that she was extricating herself from Oliver's web of lies, sorrow for the father of her child, and a haunting worry about what kind of future lay ahead for her baby, one with a father potentially behind bars. The day after Oliver's court appearance, Ava woke to a text from an unknown number. "I'm sorry." "Oh." She stared at the message for several minutes, waves of sadness rolling through her. His apology was too little too late, like a whisper in a roaring storm. But it was better than silence. Over the next week, Oliver's attempts to contact her became more frequent. Voicemails and texts appeared daily. Ava listened to some tears gathering in her eyes as Oliver's usually confident voice cracked with desperation. He begged for forgiveness, confessed he had been reckless, and claimed to still love her. Yet Ava couldn't forget the nights he'd lied to her face. She couldn't erase the memory of that leaked video or the swirl of scorn she'd endured from the public, and she certainly couldn't ignore the federal charges. Samantha advised her not to respond, at least until the separation process and potential custody arrangements were established. But deep inside, Ava grappled with conflicting emotions. She remembered the Oliver who once left her handwritten love notes every morning, the Oliver who built a children's library wing at the local hospital. Could that man still exist? Or had he always been an illusion? In quiet moments, she would place a hand on her growing belly heart, aching for the child who might never know a father outside prison walls. For all Oliver's sins, Ava couldn't deny that she wished he had chosen a different path, one that might have let them remain a family. Despite the turmoil, Ava discovered she wasn't alone. In the wake of her public statement, letters of support flooded in from women who had faced similar betrayals. Some messages came from single mothers who offered encouragement and practical tips on raising a child independently. The outpouring moved Ava to tears. It gave her a renewed sense of resolve. Philanthropic circles that had once rolled out the red carpet for Oliver now embraced Ava instead. Organizers at the Wilson Children's Hospital invited her to speak at an upcoming fundraiser, praising her authenticity and resilience. Representatives from various women's advocacy groups reached out inviting her to collaborate on initiatives that assisted pregnant women in crisis. Ava felt a flicker of hope. Though her marriage was crumbling, she could funnel her pain into a new purpose, advocating for women caught in relationships eroded by power imbalances and betrayals. Delilah even suggested they start a foundation to provide legal and emotional support to pregnant women facing domestic or financial struggles. Yet with each invitation came the inevitable question, what's next for Oliver's wife? The irony wasn't lost on Ava. She was no longer Oliver's wife in any practical sense, but the world still tied her identity to his. She resolved to carve out her own name and mission, separate from his tarnished legacy. In her quieter moments, though, when the well-wishers and supporters had gone home, she still faced the emptiness left by Oliver's absence. Even with the world rallying around her some nights, she felt more alone than ever. A few weeks into Oliver's legal battles, Ava received a call from his attorney. He wanted to arrange a private meeting. No press, no cameras, just Oliver and Ava in a neutral location. The request startled her. A part of her had begun to imagine a future with no direct contact at all. Despite Samantha's caution, Ava agreed, feeling the child shift in her womb, like a gentle reminder that Oliver was still the father. They chose a small law firm's conference room downtown, one with tinted windows that blocked any paparazzi from capturing the encounter. Oliver arrived first, dressed in a tailored suit, He looked paler, thinner, and burdened by a stress that had etched lines into his face. When Ava entered, they locked eyes. For a moment, neither spoke. The tension was so thick she could barely breathe. Finally, he broke the silence. "I know I've lost your trust, and maybe I'll never regain it. But I wanted to see you to ask about the baby." His voice was hushed, almost reverent. Ava swallowed, placing a protective hand on her belly. "The baby's fine, healthy," she said, her voice hoarse. "I'm due in a few months." Oliver exhaled a shaky breath, a mixture of relief and sorrow. "I made an unforgivable mistake. And now I'm paying for it in ways I never imagined. But if there's any chance at all, I want to be there when our child is born." A swirl of conflicting emotions welled in Ava. She wanted to protect herself, to keep him at arm's length. Yet she couldn't deny the child's need to know its father, assuming he wasn't behind bars. I can't promise anything right now," she replied cautiously. Oliver nodded, understanding that words wouldn't erase the hurt he'd caused. The meeting ended quietly with more questions than answers. As Ava left, she wondered if there was any glimmer of reconciliation, or if it was simply too late for that. Time moved forward, even if Ava felt stuck in emotional quicksand. Weeks turned into months, and her pregnancy edged into its final trimester. Her belly swelled, making everyday tasks more cumbersome, but also filling her with a fierce, protective love for the child growing inside. Oliver's legal battles took center stage in national media. Each court date brought fresh revelations of financial misconduct, fraudulent tax filings, shady shell companies, and possible insider trading. Courtroom sketches of Oliver flooded the news, capturing his anxious eyes and trembling posture. Still, he occasionally sent Ava messages, updates on his case lamentations about losing major assets, even an ultrasound-themed baby blanket he had purchased before the scandal blew up. Ava read and received these gestures with guarded compassion. She was no longer naive enough to believe they fixed anything, but she could see the desperation in his attempts. Meanwhile, Ava's philanthropic work blossomed. She collaborated with Liz White to hold a charity drive for underprivileged pregnant women, collecting baby supplies, prenatal vitamins, and funds for maternal care. The event drew significant media coverage, with many praising Ava for turning personal tragedy into positive impact. Through it all, she grappled with her upcoming childbirth, uncertain whether Oliver would or should be there. The clock was ticking toward a new life entering the world, and she had yet to reconcile the role Oliver would play. As each day passed, the question burned brighter. Could a man so consumed by lies and greed ever become a loving father? Ava's labor came unexpectedly one evening well before her due date. She had been at Delilah's brownstone, finalizing details for another charitable event, when a sharp pain sliced through her. Gasping, she doubled over, her heart pounding in sudden alarm. Delilah rushed her to the nearest hospital, the swirl of city lights casting an eerie glow against the anxious hush of the car ride. By the time they arrived, Ava's contractions had intensified, leaving her breathless and trembling. Nurses whisked her into a maternity suite, hooking her up to monitors. Panicked Delilah contacted Samantha Holden, who in turn thought to call Oliver's attorney. Within an hour, Oliver appeared at the hospital, looking frantic and disheveled. The medical staff recognized his face from the scandalous headlines, but remained professional. Ava, though startled to see him, was too overwhelmed by pun to protest. Time blurred in a dizzying swirl of contractions, medical jargon, and shouted encouragement. Ava was gripped by a primal blend of fear and determination, tears leaking from the corners of her eyes. Oliver hovered by her side, tentatively offering a hand. In her pain, she grasped it instinctively. Hours later, after what felt like an eternity, Ava heard the baby's first cry. Relief and awe collided in her chest. The nurse carefully placed a tiny, wriggling infant in Ava's arms. She sobbed, pressing kisses to the baby's delicate forehead. Through tear-blurred vision, she saw Oliver standing nearby, eyes shining with raw emotion. In that instant, their entire scandalous past receded, eclipsed by the fragile miracle of new life. Yet the question lingered. Would this fleeting moment of unity carve a lasting path forward for them, or would the shadows of betrayal and legal peril snuff it out? Back at the hospital, Ava watched as Oliver gently rocked Amelia, his face softened with awe. For a moment, he looked like the man she once loved before Leeson scandal. He whispered stories to Amelia, promising to change to be present. Ava remained guarded. "This doesn't undo everything," she said quietly. "I know," Oliver replied, eyes on their daughter, "but I want to earn your trust back for her." Later, as discharge papers were signed, Oliver asked if he could come home with them. Ava paused, then shook her head. "Not yet. Amelia and I need time." He nodded visibly, crushed but respectful. "Thank you for letting me be here." As she cradled Amelia and stepped into the waiting car, Ava felt both the weight of the past and the hope of a future. Trust was fragile, but for her daughter's sake, she was willing to leave the door cracked just enough. In the weeks after Amelia's birth, Ava embraced motherhood in quiet refuge, away from media glare. Oliver, facing trial, visited often gentle with Amelia, sincere in his efforts. Ava remained cautious, but let him in a little at a time. Then came his sentencing. Found guilty of tax evasion and securities fraud, Oliver received 5 years in federal prison. Outside the courthouse, tears slipped down his face as he told Ava, "I'll serve my time. I hope there's still a chance for Amelia, and maybe for us." Ava, holding Amelia close, replied softly, "We'll see. One day at a time." As Oliver was led away, Ava stood beneath the Chicago sky, her daughter nestled in her arms. The fairy tale had crumbled, but something more honest remained a second chance. Not for romance, but for truth, for healing, and for a life finally free of secrets. She was ready to build that future, one step at a time. Ava Carmichael's life changed the moment the leaked footage of her husband's affair hit the internet. But it was the power of her own voice at that pivotal press conference that truly redefined her destiny. While Oliver's empire crumbled under the weight of his transgressions and legal battles, Ava emerged stronger, driven by her love for her newborn daughter and a determination to carve out a future rooted in truth. Ultimately, hers is a story of resilience, triumphing over betrayal of motherhood, guiding the path to self-discovery. Ava transformed from a silent figure, overshadowed by her husband's fortune, into a public advocate for women facing emotional, financial, and marital turmoil. Though Oliver's journey led him to a prison cell, Ava found the courage to stand on her own, proving that even the darkest revelations can pave the way for newfound purpose. If you found meaning or inspiration in Ava's journey, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Your support empowers us to uncover more stories that shine a light on the power of truth and resilience. Together, let's continue inspiring and uplifting one another, one extraordinary tale at a time.